In 2020, remote work was celebrated as the ultimate victory for the middle class. In reality, it was a trap. It triggered the most significant destruction of corporate jobs in American history. Not from a recession, but from a perk. This is the story of how working from home gave corporations the perfect weapon, and how they used it. 1. The promise. From 2020 to 2021. In March 2020, 50 million American workers packed up their laptops and went home. Almost nobody assumed it would permanently restructure the American economy, but that is exactly what happened. Within months, the data started coming in. Productivity held. The infrastructure of the modern corporation, it turned out, was more portable than anyone had admitted. For the first time in a generation, the professional class had leverage. Salaries climbed. The balance of power between employer and employee had shifted, and workers knew it. Remote work was the symbol of that shift. What nobody was watching closely enough was what was happening on the other side of the equation. While workers were celebrating, corporations were learning something. They were learning exactly who was essential and who was not. Section 2. The Trap. From 2022 to 2023. While workers were settling into their home offices, corporations were doing something they had never been able to do before. They were watching. Who was shipping work? Who was generating output that could be measured? And who was doing something vaguer? Something that, when you looked at it long enough through a spreadsheet, started to look a lot like overhead. Middle managers had always been difficult to evaluate. Remote work made it visible in the wrong way. On a video call, the middle manager looked identical to someone doing nothing. So corporations started asking a question they had never had clean data to answer before. What would happen if we removed this layer entirely? By 2023, they had their answer. Middle managers made up 1/3 of all corporate layoffs in 2023. Thousands of jobs gone. 5 years of distributed work had shown executives exactly which roles generated measurable output and which ones generated coordination. And in a world where coordination could increasingly be handled by software, the coordinator started to look expendable. But the layoffs were only half the story, because some companies had found a way to cut their workforce without calling it a layoff at all. 3. The Weapon. 2023 to 2024. In the summer of 2023, AT&T sent a message to 26,000 of its managers. They were required to return to the office in person at least 3 days a week. They had to report to one of 9 approved office locations, which meant that roughly 15% of those 26,000 managers were being told to either uproot everything or leave the company. By 2023, return-to-office mandates had quietly become one of the most effective corporate restructuring tools in modern business history. The logic was cold and simple. When a company lays off workers directly, it triggers a cascade of costs. But when a company changes its remote work policy and employees choose to leave rather than comply, that is a resignation, not a layoff. The company pays nothing. The optics are clean. The targets were specific. Companies were not trying to push out everyone. They were trying to push out a particular profile, the mid-career professional with options. The person who, if made uncomfortable enough, would leave on their own and save the company the cost of firing them. The promise of remote work had not just changed where people worked, it had changed where they lived. And when that promise was quietly revoked through a policy memo, the people who had built their lives around it had nowhere to go. Except out. Which was, of course, exactly the point. Section 4. The Numbers. 2024 to 2025. By 2024, the scale of what had happened started to become impossible to ignore. 1 in 4 American workers who lost their jobs that year worked in professional and business services. The white-collar sector was now the epicenter of the damage. But none of this, not the layoffs, not the return-to-office mandates, not the doom loop, was the actual engine driving the bloodbath. Those were symptoms. The cause was something bigger, something that remote work had quietly made possible. Section 5. The Real Story. AI and Globalization. Here's the thing about remote work that nobody wanted to say out loud. The moment a company proved that a job could be done from a kitchen table in Ohio, they had also proved it could be done from an apartment in Manila. Remote work didn't just change where Americans worked. It quietly destroyed the geographic monopoly that had protected their salaries for decades. By 2023, the globalization of white-collar work had accelerated. Roles that had been easiest to perform remotely were being quietly offshored or restructured around international contractors who could perform the same work for a fraction of the cost. But offshoring was only half of it. The same productivity tools that had made remote work viable were being rapidly augmented by artificial intelligence. And AI didn't just make remote workers more efficient. In many cases, it made them unnecessary. Because that is the sequence that most people missed. Remote work forced companies to digitize and document their workflows. Every process, every approval chain, every communication loop had to be written down. In doing so, companies inadvertently created the perfect training data for the AI systems that would come next. They mapped their own operations. And then they handed that map to technology that could run the same operations without the humans. Remote work did not cause any of this, but it accelerated everything. It proved the jobs could be location independent, which made them globally competitive. And it forced companies to digitize their operations, which made those operations legible to AI. Remote work opened the door. Globalization and AI walked through it. In 2022, Google declared a code red when ChatGPT threatened its business. Nobody declared a code red for the millions of white-collar workers being restructured out of existence at the same time. Remote work didn't cause this. It just opened the door. And what was waiting on the other side was always going to walk through it. If you're curious about more corporate breakdowns, subscribe for more. Then click the link on the screen to keep watching.